we're reluctant to change, but we want change, right? We always want a better future reality. We don't know how to get there, or we're scared to get there. And so, like any great story, it doesn't matter.
PJ.
Hey,
how are you?
good.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, like a day. We're doing back-to-back episodes. I'm so glad to have you. And we did an episode on ADHD and relational challenges and wins as a superpower in marriage. Love that episode. We're having a transition now. We're going to talk about business, stories, epic movies, and how we can create a hero story that has the power to change lives. And that's probably, someone listening is like, seems a little idealistic. Because it probably is in some ways, right? Because when we're talking about story, we're talking about vision, and story is really based on a system of ideals. I mean, when we're talking about ideologies and where we would want to go, let's unpack first the idea, because you're a movie guy. Mm-hmm. You've not only watched movies, you are in the industry. Mm-hmm. And I am a huge fan of stories. Obviously, most of my research is around the stories of individuals, icons, if you will, of entrepreneurship. And I found correlations in what I think are epic stories in film, how film draws us to be a part of it, right? You think about a movie and you think about, let's just Lord of the Rings, right? Mm-hmm. And if you watch Lord of the Rings, there's a character that you probably most closely identify with. Think, if I was a cast member in this story, this is who I'd be. And who is that?
Jar Jar Binks. Right? No. You know, at times Aragon, at times, I don't know, Gollum.
Right. Yeah. But you think, okay, who am I in this story? And because we get drawn into stories, and I want you to really start to unpack this, because as we transition from how we look at a story in a film to how we look at a story in a business and really find these connecting points, I think that our audience, especially in a business world, not even in a business, I think that we can translate this to a family environment, to a community environment, because deep down, I believe we desire to be part of a story. Mm-hmm. And why not create stories that are, I don't want to use the word epic, but I am going to use the word epic.
Larger than life.
Yeah. Why not create stories that are so attractive? Mm-hmm. So attractive, worthwhile, achievable, based on meaningful, yeah. Relevant, mm-hmm. Impactful. Mm-hmm. And we know that there are companies who do this excellently. We'll talk about some of that and give some examples on this episode. But before we even get to companies, let's talk about what are some of the hallmarks and the mechanics of the building blocks of a great film.
That's a great question. So you've heard of the hero's journey, right?
Yep.
But for those in our audience who, may have not heard of this, there was a great writer called Joseph Campbell, and he wrote this story called A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he talks about how throughout history, most great tales, whether it's the Gilead or, Beowulf to the Bible, all of these have common themes in it's how they're telling these stories. And I'll use the example of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings as easy comparables, but even Harry Potter works the same, and most stories have this thing. So you have the sense of normalcy where you have a normal person that sort of identifies with the audience. There's nothing maybe interesting. They're wistful. You know, Luke is a moisture farmer on a desert,
yeah.
whatever that is. Harry is just a kid who lives in a broom closet. Very relatable. You live in New York City. And then there is what they call the, I think it's inciting events, which displaces their sense of normalcy. Oftentimes, you know, with Harry, it's the letter that comes in the mail. With Luke, it's the Empire hunting, you know, kind of him down, and his parents meet. And then they get the call to adventure from that. At that point, usually in stories, we want the hero to reject the call to adventure because it shows growth, opportunity for growth. And it also shows that they don't want to leave. They're reluctant to leave their sense of normalcy because we all are, and we all do this all the time. We get the opportunity to work at a new startup or something like that, or be part of, and we say no.
Get drafted.
We get drafted. Yeah.
This is going to mess my life up, right?
Totally.
My normalcy, my routine.
Because we're reluctant to change, but we want change, right? We always want a better future reality. We don't know how to get there, or we're scared to get there. And so, like any great story, it doesn't matter. You know, I think Obi-Wan Kenobi initially tells Luke, like, you have to go finish your father's work. You have to join us. You have to fight. He says, I can't do that. I have to go to Tachi Station, pick up power converter, you know, whatever.
That's pretty good.
He gives the greatest actor, one of the greatest actors, had one of the worst lines, poor guy. So he said no to Obi-Wan, but that's when there's sort of this crossing of the Rubicon of like, it doesn't matter. Destiny chose you regardless. And Harry, wasn't like, it was his destiny to kind of fulfill his family legacy, all those things.
I think that's important. Like, just to stop there for a moment, because the continuity of a film, like, you know, we look at a film, and what's happening is the filmmakers are attempting to help us to suspend our own reality and join in creating a reality around this experience, right? And that suspension of reality also requires there to be a continuity of what an expectation would look like based on a real scenario. In other words, in the real world, if I'm confronted with some major change, I am generally going to resist. And so in a film, if the protagonist is very amiable or just like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, it bounces us back out of that suspension of reality, because then it does not hold its weight in what we would expect to happen in the real world.
Right.
So I think that's important.
Right, because ideally we want to see ourselves in movie protagonists, right?
Correct, yes.
Because we're what we want as a viewer going into these is to have the experience to vicariously live through these characters on screen. And
exactly. So that pushback, right, that resistance is what we would expect of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story writers, the story makers must make that as realistic as possible. So with the Harry Potter piece, where all the letters are flooding in, and of course the uncle and aunt are throwing them away, right? They're getting ready, and they have more and more letters, right? And same thing with,
consider Frodo, right? This is great. So all he's known as the Shire. Hobbits don't leave the Shire, and he's supposed to go where? It's not in his nature to do great adventures.
Exactly, and it takes this entire scene where you have all of these larger than life characters who are all warriors, by the way,
right?
Who are fighting over how to get rid of this, evil ring, if you will, right? And there's no way to do it. And Frodo, the reluctant hero, like, I'll do it, and with the reluctance though, it's like, and then you see these epic characters looking at this little hobbit who could be gobbled up in a heartbeat, and agreeing to walk with him. Yes.
And that's what makes the story so iconic. Like, we like James Bond films, but for the most part, they're not relatable. All the cool guy movies, they're not.
Right.
They're like, we don't resonate with them. We think they're cool, but like Star Wars is a great example of like, there's all these incredible people who do amazing things, but they don't start like the heroes don't start that way. Right. The heroes start like us.
Every Jason Statham movie, every John Wick movie, every James Bond movie, right? Like you said, just about everything that rocks in.
Yeah.
It's like cool, but that's not me.
It's not me. And honestly, it's the reason we have way less emotional buy-in on those movies compared to any Pixar movie. Because of course, Pixar's master of storytelling. Yeah. We've actually talked about Pixar before. But in those movies, they've gotten the formula down. And, we talk about formulas and cliches as sometimes if they're a bad thing. But really, it's like, it's the principle we're talking about. It's almost like our human heart is yearning for a structure of things. It's almost like our body, we need fat, we need protein, and we need carbs. And so in a sense, like I think our hearts yearn for these particular elements of the story because they derive so much meaning when put together in this way, like a complex building blocks that when together, it's like, oh, this is perfect. And so that's kind of the hero's journey we walk through. Let me walk through the rest of the kind of cycle. And so they'll of course meet the mentor along the way, Obi-Wan, Gandalf, Dumbledore. They're kind of wizard-like, right? Even in other movies, the mentor character still kind of forms as this guide. But the important thing, and what we'll talk about with brands, is that Obi-Wan Kenobi was not the hero of the story. Right. And oftentimes in these movies, the mentor, the wizard, will die oftentimes relatively early on, right? Lord of the Rings, spoiler alert, sorry guys, it's been 21 years since those movies came out. So get some culture. Same with Star Wars, it's been 40 years or whatever, 35. Obi-Wan dies in film 1, Gandalf dies in film 1. And what that process lets us do is the hero has received training, but now it's up to them to decide if they want to embody those values and essentially take up the mantle of that role. And of course, like you see in later Star Wars movies, the hero now becomes the mentor to future disciples. And the journey goes on. Yeah.
Interesting. So, huge, right? So I'm already putting together parallels with the business world, right? Because let's talk about change. When you're presenting a product or a service to a potential customer or client, right? It's change. They have to change their behavior, their routine to accept your product or service. That's the nature of business. That's the nature of leadership, actually. If we look at leadership as this philosophy of moving into a better future state, well, that is change. And so there may be resistance. We should expect resistance by our protagonist, our hero, who we're labeling as our customer. Mm-hmm. So our customer is actually our hero. We're not the hero of the story as a business owner or a salesperson or a creator.
Right. We're the mentor.
We're the mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're the guide.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so appropriate to make sure we understand our role, and so that we're preparing the hero to experience a story that they get to win ultimately at the end.
Right. We can dive a little more into examples, but we were talking about Wrangler earlier, Jeep Wranglers, and sort of Jeep culture. Jeeps are kind of a cult lifestyle brand because it's not about oftentimes how most of the customers use the car on a day-to-day basis, but it's the possibility of the story that you owning that car says about yourself. Yeah. I am a person who can be adaptable in any situation. I'm a person who feels prepared. I'm a person who also feels ready for adventure. And should that day come, I'm ready for it. And it goes to show I have a Jeep. This is my group identity too, right?
Group identity. It's so powerful. In fact, we bought a Jeep. My wife bought a Jeep. And the first time I drove it, she says, "Oh, you got to wave." I'm like, to who? And she goes, "Well, when someone drives by in a Jeep, they'll generally give you a wave and you have to wave back. I'm like, well, why? And she explained the whole, post World War II and this community that's been created around it. And then of course there's other factors too. There's other pieces of this community that developed, like the little duck, right? That people pass around on different Jeeps, and it becomes an experience at that point, right? And you're bound with this shared sense of adventure, even though, as you've stated off mic, most people just drive suburban. They're not off-road. Some people do, of course, but that's not necessarily the purpose of it. But what it does is it puts you as the hero of this story, how you author it, driving a Jeep.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Because Jeep is just they're the method of me becoming that hero. You know what I mean? Like, or it's okay. Maybe Red Bull is another good example. So this is a brand started off as, sugar and caffeine, right? It's like the most basic sort of, beverage concept. But what Red Bull did over any other drink is they created kind of a mythos, and really it's like Nike, just do it, right? Red Bull, it's not even that gives you wings. It's actually, honestly, the extreme sports competitions that they were sponsoring and bringing all of these obscure sports, and Red Bull kind of coincided with GoPro, and they became these incredible power brand partners where all of these insane extreme sports were captured by GoPro in a way the world's never seen before. But Red Bull had been so broad with their marketing and funding of all these things that now in my mind, I'll see a Red Bull sitting on a desk, and there's this slight excitement when I see that over, I don't know, pick up some other weird energy drink, like Monster maybe. Yeah. There's no mythos that comes with Monster that my mind thinks. But, when I have a Red Bull and I'm going snowboarding, now I'm tapping into that greater community that I've seen doing wingsuit jumping, doing, Carl Baumbacher's like stratosphere, like he jumps out of the, 140 miles above, and like that's all a part wrapped up in a simple can of sugar and caffeine. Yeah.
Well, I think what we're hitting on is this idea that is essential to creating an epic story for you to be a guide and your customer to be a hero that's based upon a worthy cause. And what comes to mind is then many of our audience listeners may not have heard of this individual, Mr. Beast, who you've
huge
fan, and my son is too. And so unpack for our audience who Mr. Beast is and how the story he creates allows us as an audience watching his YouTube videos to participate in watching him create heroes every single day.
And I have a really good example of this. I was just watching this video last night. So Mr. Beast is one of the world's most popular YouTubers. We followed him a lot because we grew a YouTube channel to 1 million subscribers a couple of years ago. And Mr. Beast started off as a kid who would do the most ridiculous, because he's like, I don't have the money. And he was like 16, 14, 15 in high school. And so he said, I don't have the money to do any of the crazy pranks, but I know I want to get there. And so I'm just going to do what it takes for now to create these experiences on YouTube that no one's ever seen before. So he started off like, I'm going to read every word in the dictionary for like 3 days straight. So 3 days straight, he was like 18-hour days on YouTube Live doing crazy things. He sawed a plastic table in half with a plastic knife. He was just doing crazy stuff for years until he started to get enough viewers that saw, dude, this dude's committed to just extreme stuff that people would click on, like crazy stuff. So once he got his first he's got his first $5,000 budget. And a brand's like, hey, we'll give you $5,000. You make a video. And he says, okay, just give me $10,000. I know it's not a big deal, but like, give me $10,000. And he's like, what? We don't have the budget. He's like, shut up. I'm going to give the money away. I'm not even going to take it. I'm just going to give it to a homeless person. And that's going to be the video title. It's, I give $10,000 to a homeless person. And that was the video. And like, I love it because he's in high school. $10,000 would like change his life. But instead of keeping it and just doing some ad promotion, he used all of his money to actually create an exceptional experience on camera that deviates from the norm. And so he just continued to build on that methodology of, I'm going to create sensational experiences that essentially give people what they wish they could see, what they wish they could do. And it's so the video now he's huge. But the video I saw last night was he went into Walmart and he gave people a wad of dollar bills that was $1,000. And he says, I can give you $1,000 right now. You can take it, or you can give $10,000 to someone else. What do you choose? So the first two people that got it was like, dude, I really want to help somebody out, but $1,000 would change everything. Like, I just had a pregnancy. And they give these really good reasons. And it's like, I totally understand. I mean, you're at Walmart, like people oftentimes are low income. So first couple of people get it. And it's like, high five, good job. And then this one kid, and he was like him and his girlfriend, and they're like, we need it, but I really want to he looks out of the corner of his eye, and there's this woman with a carriage and a stroller, new mom at Walmart. And he's like, just let me bring $10,000 to her. So he brings this briefcase over, he gives it to her, and she just starts like sobbing, uncontrollably weeping. And she's like, again, you don't know. I just had a baby. We couldn't afford it. Now I can buy diapers, all this stuff. He starts crying too. And you say, that was an amazing experience. But here's what makes it better. Mr. Beast says, thank you so much. No one else gave it away. I want to give you $10,000 too. And now he gets $10,000 as well. And every video is kind of crazy like that.
Bro, mic drop.
Yeah.
Mic drop. So what is he doing here? I mean, it's so attractive. Like you said, number one YouTuber. Mm-hmm. It's clearly a system and a process that attracts all multitudes of people, millions of people, to become an audience in his story that he creates that makes a hero out of his customer, right? The person who he wants to.
Right. Because let me give you a few, just real quick, few more types of videos he does. So he'll do most of his competition related. So if you live in this circle for whoever, okay, here's the good one. Lamborghini. He buys a Lamborghini, $100,000, $200,000. He says, like, 6 people put your hand on the car. 6 people put their hand on the car. He says, last person to take their hand away keeps the car. And the whole video is these guys for days, and they have to sleep with their hand on the car. If they fall asleep, they'll move. And it's like, and he'll pull planks, he'll do water, he'll do all these things. He'll try and bribe them away. $25,000 to walk away right now. You know, you could lose that. And all his videos are like that. Like, last person to leave the circle. People are like 2 weeks, 3 weeks in his studio, just like living there, because they'll walk away with like $100,000. So it's all about kind of Survivor style shows of, do you have what it takes? Do all these normal people have what it takes to exhibit exceptional fortitude? And we as the audience get to live in that too. We're asking ourselves, could I have what it takes to leave my hand on a Lamborghini for 6 days? Do I have what it takes? This one guy, he paid, I think, $500,000 to live in a home away from his family for like 3 months straight. And the guy did it, and he lost all this weight, and Jimmy like kept him at night with like clowns and trumpets and all this stuff. So we sort of get to experience these magical journeys that people go on. And the guy who was in there for 100 days, he went in, like I said, like overweight and like all these things. But by the end of it, he was reading every day. He was super fit. He was like, just, you could see he was centered because he didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have anything. And now we get to see these people go on these journeys through those videos. And we go on the journey too with him.
We go on the journey too.
Yeah.
And so someone listening and say, okay, that's fantastic.
Right.
I think that's great. That's YouTube. I'm sure he's making tons of money off of advertisements and merchandise and whatever else. But that's not my mom and pop shop. Just name it. It could be a mechanic shop.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Because that's the reality of a real business. Mm-hmm. And taking that philosophy to a day in, day out small business, medium sized business, even a large business, is really, if you can do it, it's a game changer.
It is, and I'll tell you a great example of the mechanic shop. Okay, so you remember our friend, I don't know if you can bleep out his name, John Doover, who was is one of the best
Right.
car wrappers. You go to any average car wrapper that has no media, no promotions around it. It's like, okay, they do the thing. You go to John Duvers. This dude wins national competitions, wins blah, 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 blah. So kind of like Mr. Beast, through watching their social media and seeing all the ways they win and do impossible challenges, when I go to get my car wrapped by John, I tap into that greater, like just like Red Bull, that greater mythology. And I feel like now when my friends have seen, dude, your car's insane. I've never seen anything like that. Well, I got a wrap by John Duver. That's how normal business is.
Yes.
Like that. Yeah.
Yes. And so you're the hero of that story. The story is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And the company has given you a worthy cause. They've given you a worthy cause and say, we'll be your guide
Right.
in achieving and reaching your desired outcome in this worthy cause. Let's take accounting, for example. Right? Come on. If you're
All right, you pitched me on a fantastic story on accounting.
If you're gonna go deep, you might as well go with like an industry that seems the most bland industry you could ever think of. But one of my philosophies with our accounting and advisory firm is that we together, as we author this story, you the hero and us the guide, we do not want to give the IRS, the government, 1 red cent more than they're legally entitled to have. And so let's work together and fight and put together all the possible resources under the law to give them not 1 red cent more. So it becomes a worthy cause, right? You're the hero. I'm guiding you. And then when we reach that end state every year, and we sign that return, we've made it. We've given them not 1 red cent more.
I love that. And how, again, I'm a filmmaker, right? Like I'm always thinking of how do we turn that into a story? So if you're the brand, you're asking me, PJ, how are we marketing this business, right? I would say you have to market it around stories, around transformations of you showing before and afters of your clients, saying that, we're small mom and pop business. For years, we've been getting murdered, crucified by taxes, whatever. Like taxes are a huge pain point for us. And we've never been able to take vacations as a result. And now, since working with Nate, you see where you're going with this, right? Like Nate figured out a way that we restructured our org structure to where, we now save around $15,000 in taxes a year. And we're able to go to, and then you show them in Disney. Come on.
So that happened 3 days ago.
Hey.
That happened 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So I had some new clients who wanted to consider tax saving strategies, right?
Yep.
And so we talked through, here's some tax deferment, here's some tax reduction strategies. And I had a spreadsheet, as you would expect, with each possible deduction, and then a dollar amount on what that deduction or that credit might look like. And by the end of the sheet, we had 10 possibilities based on their unique situation. It was about $40,000. And then we had a conversation, what can we do with this 40 grand? Oh, wait a minute, there's another one here for $150. And then when some might say, oh, it's only $150 on top of 40 grand. I say, well, you know what? That's a pretty nice dinner. You could take your spouse out, have a nice dinner, wherever you want to go. Maybe it's not the fanciest restaurant, but it's gonna be a great event for you to be able to participate in. And guess what? It doesn't cost you anything because we just were able to save that dollars that you were not going to even get to experience unless you participated in authoring the story.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about, right? And they left like, yeah. And I told them this, I always tell clients this. Don't look at it necessarily like, oh, it's $50. It's not much, it's negligible. What does that $50 buy?
It's not even the value sometimes it buys. If you want to think of things as storytelling, again, because I'm thinking of this as how I'd shoot a video for your company, it would be the dad who's able to tell their kid for the first time, we're going to Disneyland.
Yes. Or we're going to buy that pair of shoes that you really wanted.
Yeah.
We could afford a $75 pair of shoe, but you really wanted that $125 pair of shoe.
And the kid's first Jordans. Every kid would remember their first Jordans, right? And you are the mechanism for that dad feeling like the hero in giving his kid the Jordans, the Disney trip. Yeah.
So this was exactly what we're talking about. You know, you can apply the epic film model. If you can apply it to a car shop, if you can apply it to an accounting firm, you can apply it. You can apply it just about to any business, because what you're doing is you're improving the human condition, not just selling a widget. Right. So you've got guys like Elon Musk, who, you know, his desire is to move humanity forward. Right? It's a worthy cause. And so when you buy a Tesla, his philosophy is, you know, you're participating in advancing humanity. And when you look at, of course, Steve Jobs is gone, but his whole philosophy was creating a bicycle for the mind. He wanted to have the mind, to give the mind a tool so that it can be more efficient.
Right.
And so you then become the hero by participating in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just to what the mission you're doing for the planet. Like I just bought a Tesla, and I bought it because I do believe in their messaging of, you know, better, more greener planet. But I also believe the outcomes that them as entrepreneurs, like their fast innovation company, will actually lead towards the planet. So it's not even sometimes I'm investing in the specific just cars. It's actually just their methodology on just rethinking every industry possible. Yeah. But I get now the social status component of feeling like the Wrangler thing, of feeling like I'm a person who cares about the environment. I'm a person who's on the cutting edge of tech, and I'm able to signal that to others of like, you know, do you see that I'm like this as well? Are you like this as well? You know what I mean? Like we use brands all the time, clothing, the clothes we wear, types of clothes we wear, to signal to others like this is who I kind of think I am or I want to be. Are you like this too? And we can find commonality, right?
Yes. Yep. So another example. So you have a rehab business. One of our group members in our Leadership Elite program has a business where they rehab houses. And they don't look at it like, oh, well, I'm just rehabbing houses, I'm moving renters in. They look at it like, I am providing a way for these individuals to make new memories in a place where they can love to be, right? That changes the entire dynamic of the business, right? You're not just, okay, let's put this house up. All right, let's get it rented. No, it's how can I invest in the individual experience?
Right.
And this is, I think it's universally applicable, because if you're selling to humans, they have experiences. It's to me, it's a cop out, if you will, to not have a connection with your client, with your customer, to know what they really need beyond the functionality of a widget.
And if not, honestly, you're going to get your lunch eaten by someone who does.
Well, my friend, we did it. I'm so honored you were able to join me on this episode of A Call to Leadership. Now, this might not be for everyone, because you really have to be in a certain place in order to take the kind of steps to level up your leadership. And for those of you who feel like you're ready for something like this, there's a place you can go. You can go to our website, greatsummit.com. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. You and I will get to spend some time together and really focus on aiming for greatness. I can't wait to see you there. I'm Dr. Nate Sala, and this is A Call to Leadership.